Спасибо. Я буду говорить на английском, потому что мне более просто комфортно выражаться на этом языке. Let me start by, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak at such a prestigious forum. And of course, it goes without saying that this distinguished panel, it's an honor to be part of it. When I first saw the topic which I was requested to speak on, I was slightly taken aback in the sense that I wondered, because to me, in my mind, globalization was an economic process, multipolarity was more or less a political process, which is not really defined. So I was trying to see how and when these could be connected. But then I realized when I was reading up that what we are really talking about is, since the end of the Cold War, for the past 30-40 years, we've seen the development of a particular type of system which was, in a sense, governed by a set of countries that had set a world order in way back in the 40s. However, in that world order, what happened is countries of the South, many countries of the South, including China, the ASEAN countries, India, we greatly benefited from the process of globalization. Our development challenges that we faced in the earlier part of the middle of the 20th century, we began to overcome after 1991, and this led to a paradoxical situation where countries like China, India, and others were not anymore willing to accept the old rules of the game. In other words, we felt that since the economic weight of growth, the locomotive of economic growth was shifting towards Asia and other countries like Brazil, therefore these countries would need to have a greater say in determining political processes as well as economic processes. And that is what today everyone is calling as a movement towards multipolarity. I'm not sure whether this animal called multipolarity is something that we should all welcome, because I don't think we've lived in a world of multipolarity where you will have 5 or 6 countries, each of which says that I'm an exceptional country and I can do what I want to protect my national interest. May not be the best of things. And at the same time, I do not see many of these countries agreeing to so-called rules-based order in any kind of meaningful manner. But that does not mean that, even if I differ with this, that this process of movement away from a hegemony of a particular type is not going to take place. The diffusion of economic power is going to lead to diffusion of political power on the global scene. And it is this process that, of course, it is dangerous, but I presume this is the process that the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party was referring to when he spoke to President Putin and said that we are driving the change. It is an important change. And I think a country like India would welcome this change. But at the same time, there are some boundaries of caution that I would like to keep in mind. One is, just to speak on about, let's say, the country like India. I'm not getting into whatever the internal processes in India are, but India today faces a humongous economic challenge. There are variously estimated 300 to 400 million people who are below the poverty line, and they have to be brought above the poverty line if India has to grow and develop as a country. This is not a task at this point of time that India can do on its own. But neither is it possible for India to do it with any particular one country or any particular two countries. India will need to be part of a global system where India will contribute as well as take to make this dream of its own economic development a reality. And this is where I think the boundaries of caution that I was talking about. While we are all agreed that we don't want a hegemon, I don't think there is any difference of opinion on that. We don't want any one country to be a hegemon of either the economic or the political space. We also have to remember that those who are opposing the hegemony do not necessarily always talk in the same voice. We have differences, even amongst ourselves. And these differences are sometimes very, very fundamental. So these are issues that we have to keep in mind while we navigate this very difficult transition period in which we are. We are definitely moving away from a unipolar world. But what is ahead is not yet clear. There is a fog. And while we navigate these waters, we need to be a little careful. But in conclusion, let me just say that, I didn't want to, if I came across, I didn't want to sound a skeptic about multipolarity. I'm not. I think multipolarity is definitely better than hegemony. So in that sense, I'm an optimist that multipolarity will lead us to a better world. But whether I am a skeptic or an optimist, it doesn't matter. The movement away from unipolarity is an objective process that is taking place. And I think, as our Brazilian friend said, countries will have to very carefully assess their national interests and take steps that will protect their populations and contribute towards their prosperity. In this process, there will be difficulties. So there will be, I would say, an era of cooperation and not confrontation, but competition. So we may have sometimes certain partners in particular fields, and we may have other partners in other fields. But that does not mean that we are enemies to each other, because at the end of the day, we are all in one world, and we have to somehow live through this. Thank you.